Hey folks, this is Kalani. In Legion, we have the option to forego the raiding scene and actually be able to progress in a small group environment through the new Mythic Plus system. But does Mythic Plus currently provide enough in terms of encounter design and fresh experiences to keep people interested enough to really be considered an endgame alternative? Let's have a look at Mythic Raiding versus Mythic Plus dungeons in terms of endgame progression. The new kid on the block is Mythic Plus, and so far I absolutely love it. The main problem that this game has always had with dungeons is them staying relevant as content. It's great when we see we have 8 dungeons at launch, but when we get past the point of needing the gear that drops, we rarely ventured into them. Sure, the heroic daily was maybe worth it sometimes if you had nothing else to do, and sure, I'll run that one heroic if the satchel is active for tanks, but outside of that, it's always been a huge issue to keep people running the same dungeons that we have at launch. Most of them probably saw less action than any single one of the raids simply due to replayability. You always need the gear from raids. Well, now you also need the gear from dungeons, thanks to Mythic Plus. Mythic Plus extends the longevity of dungeons past anything that I would have expected. I'm actually excited to run another round of Maw of Souls or Halls of Valor, providing it's a decent plus level, and even better if there's another hunter to share that shiny loot with. The great thing about Mythic Plus is the system itself works so wonderfully that it can be easily applied to any future or past dungeons, with maybe a few tweaks. That means we have yet another game system added which is almost future-proof, giving us more and more content for as long as Blizzard can be bothered to keep it up to date. A lot of the replayability comes with the affixes that appear at +4, +7 and +10. These affixes make some dungeons incredibly difficult to deal with and change the way you have to approach certain pulls, bosses, or even entire dungeons. One run with one affix might be perfect and stress-free, but that same run and pathway through the dungeon might actually cause a huge headache for different affixes. The brilliant part is that new affixes can be added whenever Blizzard can think up some more ways to make the tanks run around. Which is probably the only negative thought I have toward the system right now. The majority of affixes that we have to deal with put a lot more pressure on tanks, more so than anyone else. Tanks have to tank the extra adds from teaming, tanks have to manage the stacks from necrotic, tanks have to take the damage from raging, all that good stuff. I enjoy when bolstering comes up and we try our hardest to get trash mobs to die together as close as possible, and it feels great when we pull that off and bolstering basically gets negated. That's something that the DPS have to worry about, and I really enjoy that. I love Mythic Plus because it gives players a chance to play better for better results in a small group-based dungeon environment. Going into something with 20 plus people can feel a little unpersonal at times, and having just those 5 people in a group means you can't fall back on others to fix your mistakes. Every member needs to play better to overcome new challenges, and you can learn what each player brings and when they can use it to your advantage if you're running the same group over and over. Another feature of Mythic Plus I really like is the key system. You don't get locked out of loot from a dungeon just because you've already run it once that day or even that week. As long as you have access to a usable key, you can run the dungeon and receive full credit in the form of artifact power and loot. Even if you end up with a depleted key, you can run that dungeon to reactivate the key and go on to what it upgrades to. You can endlessly run Mythic Plus with a decent goal in sight, something that we haven't really seen before. Anything worth running has always been gated behind a daily or weekly lockout. The only part that's truly locked behind a weekly lockout is the bonus chest for the highest completed Mythic Plus in the previous week. And that's a bonus. That chest scales with how well you did in the week, meaning it's always worth pushing yourself to a higher Mythic Plus completed for the higher loot rewarded in the bonus chest. There's literally no reason not to do Mythic Plus unless you don't like the dungeons, which is unfortunate as I think we've been spoiled this time around. But for anyone who really wants to progress on something and doesn't want to raid, Mythic Plus should be right up your alley. The difficulty curve is definitely there. Getting up to a +10 key can be quite trying, and actually finishing the +10 is pretty damn hard. But there are serious ones amongst us who have already managed to not only get a +15 key and complete it, but complete it within time. That's a huge feat, but one that required a lot of hard work and time. The most recent one I heard about was a Vault of the Warden's +15 finished just in time, which reportedly took the group over 40 hours, running and perfecting just that one run, the +15 key. Getting to the key took hours upon hours by itself. Going past +10 won't give you any better loot right now, But there is an achievement as well as realm firsts linked to completing a +15, so there's some definite bragging rights to throw around when it comes to those who really want to push for this stuff, but I think we can safely say they are the extreme cases. It's still nice to see confirmation that people are so invested and interested in Mythic Plus to push it as far as they can go. That's the real test if something's worth being called endgame content. The last benefit of the key system is that no matter who you are, as long as you have an active key, you can find a group relatively easily. So many people are willing to group up with you just for that key, regardless of class or spec or role. It's valuable even if you're not someone who is actively pushing towards the crazy stuff. I've seen so many carry groups who are just missing a key. Not only will they help you get loot and up your level for the weekly chest, you also get your key upgraded. You can take that key and either try get a group or carry and keep going until your key is depleted, then restart the following week. Even if you're not interested in Mythic Plus as endgame progression, you can still benefit from it quite a lot. The biggest issue I see right now is the gear isn't quite on par with Mythic Raiding. Mythic Plus caps out at 865 gear from the end of dungeon chests and 880 from weekly chests at +10 and higher. Even if you manage the crazy feat of +15, you're going to get 865 loot in your chest and 880 in your weekly. I would assume this is going to scale and reward higher item levels past +10 when the next raid tiers are unlocked. So when we get Nighthold, we'll get Heroic Nighthold as our in-dungeon cap and Mythic Nighthold as our weekly cap. That makes a lot of sense, and if that happens, that would make things a little better, but it still means that outside of very lucky Titan forging, Mythic Raiding will always provide the better gear more often. And that's okay. At this point, I feel like Mythic Plus is a requirement for progression raiders due to the easily accessible high item level loots. If you could get 880 gear from the dungeon chests, then practically all of the gearing required to push Mythic Raiding bosses would happen in Mythic Plus dungeons. The other side of that argument is if Mythic Plus is always going to reward worse gear, can it be considered an alternative to endgame PvE? I'm not too bothered about that right now, because while I do enjoy Mythic Plus, I'm still putting in the time to be a Mythic Raider. Mythic Raiding has been bashed in the past for its 20-man static roster requirement. No ups or downs when it comes to Mythic, you taking 20 people or you don't raid Mythic at all. The switch from 10 and 25 to having just one mode for 20 players was a rough transition at first, for a good reason. Some guilds just weren't able to keep 20 people active and willing to push through the progression. I know it's an issue when some chaps are ill or away for various reasons, keeping an active bench so you can raid whether rain or shine is even harder, but I feel like the payoff is totally worth it. Mythic Raiding is more balanced than it ever was when it was 10 and 25. With 20 people you can set up mechanics to work for 20, instead of 10 or 25. Everyone is on a level playing field, and having 20 bodies to throw around in random ways gives us the potential for much more complex encounters. You can only do so much with one tank, one healer and 3 DPS. Complex isn't really what I would call any dungeon mechanics. They can hurt a bit and they can make you swap targets, but there's only so much you can expect of 5 people. I love exploring and learning the different fights we get in Mythic raids. We've been getting some of the best raids we've seen in a long time, and progressing through them, while frustrating at times, is still some of the most fun I've had playing MMOs. You can also bring quite a variety of classes into the raid environment to make use of their specific benefits. Some classes aren't seeing the same love in Mythic Plus when compared to mages or hunters, for example. I've seen many a post of folks playing some of the less desirable classes, simply not getting into groups because of it unless they have a key and they're getting carried. That's not the case when it comes to raiding. Some classes can make encounters so much easier. You can actually use all the little bits and bobs that different classes or even specs bring to the table and use them creatively. Skipping across the Spider-Bird boss's web bridges with a Warlock is probably the most ridiculous thing I've seen so far in Emerald Nightmare. The specs can balance each other out as well. You can cover each other's strengths and weaknesses a lot better when you have access to more people, so you get a better rounded group overall. It may be harder to mesh together with more people, but it's truly fantastic if you can manage it. The reason the top guilds are able to stomp through content so quickly is because they play perfectly together, and they have put a lot of time into that group synergy. Mythic Raiding is still awarding the best loot the most often, and I think that's how it should be right now. You'll also find a whole bunch of prestige rewards such as mounts and titles for clearing the last boss in most Mythic raids, something we don't really see in Mythic Plus. Mythic Raiding is quite a bit harder than Mythic Plus dungeons, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Mythic Plus gets to the point where you can't handle the damage or don't have the DPS. Raiding has much more focus on learning mechanics that are going to kill you over and over until you get it right. The logistics of getting the same 20 people together on set nights at set times is also worth rewarding. A lot of folks dislike the idea of scheduled content because they either can't commit to however many nights a week, or they just want to play what they want when they want. That's fine, and you've got plenty to do this expansion, but the organised groups should be able to push into more difficult content for better rewards. That's what a lot of players love to do. They can sit down at specific times and get a lot done in their playtime. A Mythic raid will eventually be cleared in a few hours. Another thing that raiding will always have over the dungeons is key story elements which typically round up either a patch or an expansion. We don't see endgame bosses being killed in dungeons, and usually anything amazing and special is saved for the mythic versions of raids. The raids which have new phases or entire bosses reserved for the hardest difficulty have always been the most interesting to get to and progress through. Even the bosses which don't have anything particularly special feel complete on mythic difficulty, almost as if that's how these encounters were supposed to be, and normal and heroic raids have bits and pieces missing from each fight. It makes working towards the top totally worthwhile. As it stands right now, I think Mythic Plus is great for anyone who wants to take dungeons seriously or wants something to do on off nights, but I don't think it quite touches Mythic Raiding for true endgame content. The only way it could keep up is with new dungeons being introduced at the same rate new raids are opened, and for them to have Mythic Plus keys. The problem that I'm seeing right now is that our newest dungeon coming out, Return to Karazhan, doesn't actually have Mythic Plus. So if the dungeons being introduced don't give us the option to replay them in our new Mythic Plus system, then I see Mythic Plus falling quite far behind. That may be because the dungeon is so long and would require ridiculous timers, but the point still stands that we're not getting any more Mythic Plus just yet, while the raiders are getting more content to chew through. I'd say if you really want to get the most out of World of Warcraft's endgame, go for both. Mythic raiding guilds can make awesome progress with just 2 nights a week, and for every other day, if you want to jump into something challenging and worthwhile, Mythic Plus will be there waiting. I can't wait to see how 7.1 turns out, and I'm super happy both raiders and dungeoneers are getting something new. But that's it for this video. If you have any questions or queries, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.